Welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm, having a successful accounting, bookkeeping, and tax business. I'm Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center, and I'm excited to be with you and share these great insights to help you actually build your accounting business. This podcast is literally dedicated to helping accounting professionals confidently and competently offer quality accounting services to get paid what you're worth. And we encourage you to listen to our episodes as well as subscribing to our podcast to make the most of these different series so that you can literally apply these principles in your business so that you can differentiate yourself from your competition. I myself have been working with accounting professionals for more than 20 years, helping individuals start, build, and operate successful accounting businesses around the United States, Canada, and the rest of the world. I've had a number of successes where I've seen people literally grow their businesses beyond their wildest dreams and offer quality accounting services competently. The other thing that I would like to point out is that with Universal Accounting Center, we offer certifications, trainings, programs, all designed to offer the coaching, support, and mentoring needed to literally be in business for yourself, but not by yourself, with quality accounting services. Since 1979, we've committed ourselves to helping accounting professionals start and build their accounting businesses using proven turnkey strategies and processes to make sure that you can have the premier accounting business in your area. Now, today, we're actually going to be blessed, if I could use that word, with a special guest. It's Adrian Dayton. He's someone that I think you'll quite enjoy. Adrian is an internationally recognized speaker on social media and business development. He's trained over 19,000 professionals in the United States, Canada, the UK, Australia on LinkedIn and successful social media use. At the end of 2013, Adrian launched Clearview Social. It's a SaaS software business, and Clearview is actually a company that helps accounting professionals and others easily get up and start using social media. It's currently used by over 45,000 professionals in firms worldwide. So, Adrian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Roger. Great to be with you.
Yeah, this is going to be quite fun. So I'm kind of interested in your story simply because of the fact that I know you have an accounting background and it kind of started in accounting. So share with us how being an accounting professional led you to now be a social media marketing guru.
Yeah, sure, Roger. So actually, I have a business background and more a legal background than specifically accounting. But let me kind of tell the story and you'll see kind of where the point of intersection is. So I started out my career as actually a practicing corporate M&A lawyer in 2008. And, so my timing was really just perfect, right? And
Impeccable, in fact.
In early 2009, I started using social media to try and get a book published that I had written that had nothing to do with business. And one day, somebody that I was following on Twitter asked this question, and I joke that this was the tweet that changed my life. She said, "Does anybody know a contracts lawyer?" And I replied, and I brought my first client into my firm. And this was early 2009. Things were slowing down. I mean, it was the bottom of the economic downturn. And I went to the marketing director and I said, "Look, we don't have any work. We don't have any business. And I just brought in a client through Twitter. Why don't I teach the other associates how to do this?"
And what did they think?
Well, she looked at me like I was crazy and said, "We've been in business for over 100 years. That's not how we do things here at Jacob Fleischman and Mughal LLP. We're very conservative," is what she told me.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "Okay." And then a few weeks later, the head of my department came into my office and he closed the door and he shared with me a few words I'll never forget. He said, "You're fired." And it just kind of sticks with you, right?
Yeah, you're not going to forget that one.
And, they had never laid people off in the 100-year history of the firm, but with the downturn within 6 months, me and 3 of the 4 other associates were out on the streets. And I called my wife and she was crying, because we had a baby at home and we had student loans and we had just bought a house. And I said, "Honey, it's okay. I have an idea. I'm going to start a business teaching professionals how to use Twitter."
Oh, and I'm imagining right now she was quite excited about that.
Yeah, she cried harder. No, but she was, and says a lot about my wife, is she was supportive. And even though I had a job offer soon after that, I decided to turn it down, and I saw that something was happening. I saw that there was this power behind social media, and that the vast majority of professionals, lawyers, and accountants had no idea what it was. And
So
so
how would
actually,
you
yeah.
so how would you define social media? I mean, that's kind of a catch-all phrase. What is social
Yeah.
media?
Yeah. So social media, it's basically any of these websites where you have users generating all of the conversation and all of the content, right? So when I think of social media, I mean there's 100 different social networking sites, but when you talk about what are the social networks that professionals use, there's kind of the big three, right? Number one is LinkedIn. Number two is Twitter, right? And although Twitter has some personal stuff, there's a lot of professional content there as well. And then the third that a lot of people don't even think about really is Facebook. And Facebook is so ubiquitous. When I talk about social networks, those are the three I'm really referring to.
And when you're bringing up these different platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, I think one of the things that's common is people will say they're familiar with it, but honestly, would you suggest everyone needs to have a profile on each, or do they just need to go participate, or what kind of presence do they first need to have in each of these platforms?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I always tell people is it's better to choose one site where you can go deep than just be on the surface of multiple sites, right? So
Well
some
said.
people have a bunch of profiles on a bunch of sites and they never do anything anywhere. In fact, the number one question I get from accountants is, I have a LinkedIn profile. I don't do anything with it. What am I missing?
Yes. Yes. And the way I look at social media is it's like the proverbial duck above the water looking all calm and collective. And below, it's just frantically paddling away to stay afloat and to move along. And the reason why I use that analogy is because I think in social media, everybody leads with their best foot. They give their best impression. They're giving the best perspective of what's going on in business and life. But in reality, we're down there trying to figure out what's the best strategy to be using to really engage and connect and really leverage this platform to help us professionally. So I'm excited about our conversation because I think we're going to tap into some of those things. So what do you think is the biggest challenge for a professional to actually use to get started in social media? What maybe is the daunting thing that inhibits them?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because typically most older professionals, like let's just say baby boomers and older, their biggest concern is the technology. But it's kind of a red herring because the technology, it's not that complicated to use, and it's getting easier and easier. As these tools evolve, they actually get simpler, not more complex.
Hmm.
Um, the biggest challenge for all professionals in all levels is taking the time to figure out their strategy. And let me talk specifically what I mean by strategy, right? Because this term strategy gets thrown around, you know, really often. But
Yeah.
but every professional on social media, they have a strategy. And you kind of alluded to the general strategy of most people. Their strategy is they want to look successful, and that's fine, right? That can be done well. But where they lose all their steam with social media is they want to look just like all the other professionals. They want to look similar to everyone else. Where really the key to social media, the key to strategy in almost every area is to figure out differentiation. How can you stand out, and how can you attract a very specific type of person towards you to hire you for your services?
Hmm. Well, one of the things I was going to say is I liked how you said there's a strategy because I think a lot of times people are just simply trying to start with having a presence. They just want to have their profile filled out and created, and they want to get to that point where they feel comfortable saying, I'm online, I'm on Facebook, I'm
Right.
in LinkedIn. And so once they get to that point of saying, I filled out all those questions that they asked as I'm creating my profile, I've gone through the process and the interface says I'm 100% complete. They want to get to that point to simply say, I have a presence. And then obviously you pointed out that what's more important is having a strategy. And I like how you were saying you need to differentiate yourself. You don't want to appear like everyone else. You want to have something that's unique about you in your social presence.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so what I often say to people is I say, what are you best at? And the most common response is a laundry list, right? It's the kitchen sink of everything they've ever done, every type of work.
Mhm.
But in social media, you kind of need to ask two questions. One question is, what am I very best at that makes me unique? And it has to be limited. It's all about limiting this to one, two, or three things where you have real credibility to bring in business. And then the second thing, and this is the hardest thing, is what can I leave out?
Mm.
And so when we talk about leaving things out, I like to use the example of big companies, right? You think about Southwest Airlines. For them to be the most consistently profitable airline for almost 30 years running, what they do is they left out long haul flights. They left out first class. They left out serving meals on planes, right? And by that being their strategy, limited to what they can be great at, which is, fast turnaround, best on-time flights, and a discount airline, they've been able to crush the competition because they've just said no to things. And so for professionals, it's almost like the biggest fear an accountant has is that if they use a strategy that limits their scope, they're going to lose out on opportunities. But it's actually quite the opposite. If you have too big of a laundry list of areas where you can help people, then you're never distinguishing yourself in any way, and you just fade into the background. It's far too competitive online. To stand online, you need to choose what you're best at, and focus on that. Both. So just to use LinkedIn as the example, on your headline in LinkedIn where it says, the default, it says where you work, right? Adrian Dayton, uh, uh, accountant or CPA at such and such a firm.
Yeah.
Instead, that headline needs to tell people specifically where how you can help them, right? Focusing on helping companies, receive R&D tax credits, or helping small businesses save money, especially with regards to the new healthcare reform and how this affects their taxes, or the new deductions that are misunderstood, right? So you need a headline that's going to speak to your ideal client so that the minute they see it, they're going to say, this is the type of accountant I'm looking for.
I like what you're sharing because I think it resonates in two areas. One, you're speaking to the idea of rather than being a generalist, be a specialist, be very clear as to what makes you unique and hone in on that. And oftentimes in that process, you're saying you need to figure out what you can leave out, what you cannot mention. And that's probably the harder part. The second thing is I like how you're referring to this out of a sense of abundance rather than scarcity. You're trying to say it's out there, just narrow it down and you're going to find those special clients. And so I like those two lines of thought because I think in social media, they make sense. It's a great strategy to start with as you're trying to develop your presences on whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook and so forth. So that's really good advice. So if I were just starting in the sense that let's say I have a LinkedIn profile, I have a Facebook profile, I'm not unaware of what these platforms are, but they're just generic. They're not specific. Where should I begin in either LinkedIn or Facebook to really kind of apply these principles that you're sharing? What should I be doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one area that I kind of alluded to is on your professional headline. So if you go to your LinkedIn profile, you click on the little picture in the top icon, and then there's a blue pen in the top right corner that lets you adjust the headline that's right next to your picture, right under your name. So that's where, if you kind of start with your headline, I like to think of that headline as your elevator pitch, right? This is the one line that you're going to say to give people a chance to see what you do and how you can help people, right? Who you help and what you do. And so I often say with that headline, the biggest point of that headline is it's not just to sell you to people that find your LinkedIn profile. That's actually secondary. The number one goal of your headline is to tell all of your friends, all of your LinkedIn connections, here's the type of business you can refer to me, right? If you're at a cocktail party and you hear someone um, bring up one of these tax issues where you're the specialist, you want all your peers to know, oh yeah, Roger, he's your guy for that. I saw it in his headline. This is his jam, right? And look, being very specific in that headline, it's not about you're still going to, the rule of online marketing is market specifically and practice broadly, right? Just because you don't mention corporate tax returns in your headline doesn't mean you won't do that work, right? You'll still bring in whatever work people send you depending on your strategy, but this is just how you market yourself, because when you show yourself to be exceptional in one area, then people infer that you can easily handle all the basic stuff. And so that headline is the first place to start with that. The second place is in your summary. Okay. And there's a summary or a bio on every social network, whether it's your LinkedIn profile bio or it's your Twitter bio that's only 180 characters, or the description on Facebook of what you do. And so in all of those, you need to narrow it down. And I don't want to make this too detailed, but the one piece of advice I'll give you is when you provide a profile, most people make the mistake of starting generally, and then at the end going specific,
Okay.
right? So they start with saying everything they do, and then at the bottom they get into some details about some of the specific things they do great. We got to invert that, right? Just like in a news article, you start with, the 5 W's, right? You got to lead with your greatest hits. Here's the things that I do really well. And then at the end, you can go more general and say, by the way, I can also help with this other stuff. But make sure you lead with your greatest strengths. If there's some things that you do unique, you do more of them than anyone else in your area, that you have special degrees that help you, or certificates that let you do that, you got to lead with your strengths. So I know it's kind of a long answer to your question, but is that helpful?
No, it's very helpful. In fact, it's causing me to want to actually pause right now and go to my LinkedIn profile and make sure I've done exactly what you've done. But I'm going to refrain, and I'm going to encourage our listeners to just jot it down, a to-do item, keep going, and we're going to get through this. So there's a nice little to-do, but let's say, for example, I've gone through and I've edited, as you've said, my profiles, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. I've gone in and customized a few of these things. So now my profile it's rocking. It's awesome. So I'm pleased with what it says. I think it's clear what I do. All of a sudden now I've got this wonderful profile. I have my presence. So what's my strategy? Do I start posting cat memes, or do I start writing articles? Do I start filming a video? What's my strategy? What should I be doing to actually get noticed?
Great. And so that's a great question. And that honestly is the biggest question I get next from people is, what should I be doing? How should I engage? How do I get more visibility online? And look, this tendency to want to share cat memes or just to share something, right? Like everyone has this. But let me just kind of frame this. When you think about how you use social media, once you have a profile that's dialed in, I want you to think about, and this may be kind of unconventional, but you want to think, how can I love and serve the people in my network? How can I help them be more successful in their businesses, save on their taxes, reduce risk, run a more profitable business? And everything you share should have that focus. And and then I can give you some details of what I mean by that.
So that sounded like a Brendan Burchardism, if I could use that as a phrase. Have I lived? Have I loved? Have I shared? Is that where that came from?
It's that's not where I thought I got it from, but I am familiar with some of his stuff, so maybe it is. Yeah. I didn't mean to rip it off of it. Sounds like I did, but
No, you didn't. But it rang true, and I was like, hey, I remember Brendan. So yeah. So here's my thing. You've got now this interest of having a voice in social media. You've got a presence, but you want to have a voice. You want to say something.
yes,
Am I writing blog posts and am I putting
okay.
posts? Is it good to ask questions? What questions are great to get engagement where the people like or comment on what I've said? Is there a strategy? Any tips or tricks, I guess, is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. Okay, so let's. We're gonna take this kind of one piece at a time. I want to give you a few kind of strategies, tips that are like, hashtag, LinkedIn hacks. I'll give you some of those, but let's talk about, to your question about the content itself. Okay. So in a perfect world, right, the highest and best use of your shares on social media would be for you to share original content meaning content you or your firm has created that is compelling, that helps people in the ways I talked about. Okay. So if you have a marketer, if you have capacity to, to write alerts about the new changes in the tax law, if you have capacity to do that, that literally that's the best thing you could share, because not only does it show your expertise, it helps people and it helps them without you charging them, right? You're giving them free advice that's not specific advice, but you're giving them free advice that they don't have to pay for, right? That just attracts people to you, like bees to honey. If you don't have the time or interest to create your own content, then the second best thing you can do is, look, you're the expert. Go find the content that will make them smarter. And it doesn't matter if some other big accounting firm created the content. If you find it and share it, when you share it on LinkedIn or you share it to Twitter, add some comments at the top. So when you share it, tell them why it's important and why you think it's going to help the people in your network. And because then, even though you weren't the one that wrote the content, they still see you as the expert because you're the messenger. You're the one that's sharing this kind of enlightening information with them. So, that's kind of, those are two very, very good engagement strategies. And then just to stay top of mind, okay, so now we're going to talk about more of the kind of tips. It's always great to ask questions to your network, and especially questions that will get a conversation started. And so you don't want to ask questions like, how's everyone doing today, or what's everyone doing for this, for the Super Bowl, right? Like those questions, aren't quite as on point as questions that are more, somewhat more business related. So, it's like, it's kind of a weird story, but I had this professional reach out to me from a big firm, and he said, "Hey, I just took a picture outside my window, a video of this huge storm that came across." This was actually in Buffalo, New York, when I lived there.
Okay.
And the storm dropped like 7 feet of snow, and he literally got this like time lapse picture outside his window of this storm coming across, parking, and just dumping snow, like record snowfall, even in Buffalo, which that says something, right? Anyway, so he calls me and he's like, "I've had like 5 million views on this video. What should I do with it?" Right? Like, you're the social media expert. How do I, make some rain from this? And like, look, it's awesome that you got 5 million views, but a picture of snowfall is just not relevant to your business, right? So it's not about getting views. It's about getting relevant views, right? It's not about sharing content that people are going to love. It's about content that's going to help people and that's going to make you look smart, so that when they have a problem, they think of you, right? Not when they want to film snow, they think of you, right? And look, there's nothing wrong with him getting 5 million views. There's just a difference between, engagement and actually driving business. Because I've been in this kind of social media world for almost a decade now, I've seen many consultants come and go, and some of them jump on social media and they're great at getting big conversations going with everyone talking, and everyone loves them and everyone's happy. But at the end of the day, they don't have a strategy around how are we reframing the way people think of us so that we're seen as professionals. Okay, so I want to so with that in mind, I do want to give you one simple tip that will increase the visibility of anything you post by 10 times.
Okay.
And that is, when you have some content of interest to share, you want to make sure you tag 5 to 10 people on that content that you think it might be of interest to. Okay. So, so for example, I gave a talk for a group called the Entrepreneurs Organization, EO. And that video was posted, it was posted on YouTube, and I was invited to share it. So when I shared it, I tagged the 5 other speakers that spoke with me on the stage. And I tagged a few other people that I thought would be interested in that subject matter. And so when it went out, automatically, all of those people received a message. So they were likely to reshare it to their network. And one thing people don't understand about the LinkedIn algorithm, sorry, when I say LinkedIn algorithm, I mean LinkedIn's decision process about who sees your LinkedIn updates.
Gotcha.
Most people don't know, when you share to LinkedIn, at most, LinkedIn is only going to make that content visible to 10% of your network. And the only reason it will make it visible to more of your network is if they have reason to believe it's going to perform better. And so what you got to do is you got to kind of hack the system. And the way you do that is tag other people so they'll like it and reshare it. That signals to LinkedIn that this is not only is this important content, but then when all these other highly influential people reshare it to their network, it's going to give you like an additional vote for that content. So LinkedIn sees this is good content. We want more people to see it. So that's a simple tactic that can have a huge impact on how many people see your content.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So one of the things that I took from this is the tags. I think that's important because you're right. They get notified that they've actually now been appeared in a post. So that's a good thing. You talked about TOMA, top of mind awareness. So with that in mind, you're trying to be relevant to the people. So you got to give good quality content, not just a time-lapse video of snow. The analogy there is you've got definitely quality versus quantity. You've got to balance those. That's great to get the exposure, but all of a sudden you don't want to be known as the snow guy. You want to be known as the X person, right?
Exactly right.
Good. Okay, so here's my thing. You've got an accountant, an accounting professional. We've got our profile. We're starting to post things, and it's not getting traction. It's just not. It's not getting liked. It's not getting comments. What's the next strategy? Do I just give up, or is there a way that I could then? Is there something more I can do when I'm consistently posting but not having any success with engagement?
Yeah, it's a great question. So typically the number one reason that content doesn't perform well, it goes back to one of two things. First off, especially if it's useful content, okay? And I know that's not like doesn't go without saying, but as long as it's useful content, number one, the headline of the content isn't compelling. So typically, shorter headlines are better than longer headlines. Headlines that have action in the words are better than ones that don't. And, content that's in list format just consistently does pretty well. So 5 things you must know about the new changes in deductions, or 3 deductions that most small businesses are forgetting about that are costing them money. So headlines are a big part of it. And then the second one is a lot of people get on LinkedIn and they accept connection requests from the people that have invited them, but they don't invite anyone. They don't build their network. And if you're very passive in building your network, right? So you just accept connection requests, but you don't actually ask for them, then your network might just not be big enough, and you might not have the right people in your network for that content to resonate. So, I talk about, there's a training I give called the 7 habits of highly effective LinkedIn users. And one of those habits is to always be growing your network. And I'm not saying connect to strangers. If you just go to the connection tab on LinkedIn, it's always going to suggest people you might know. And so look through that, right? Make sure every person you meet, even if you come back from a networking event, if you want to hand your business cards to your secretary and say, "Hey, send all these people LinkedIn connection requests," right? Like that's not ideal, right? It's better that you send them a personalized message, but just make sure you're always building your network, because oftentimes content doesn't perform well just because you don't have a critical mass in your network for it to kind of get the snowball rolling down the hill, so to speak.
I love it. So the 2 things I took from that were it's not enough to just try and engage with the groups I have, the network, the following that I have. I also have to be proactively trying to grow my network. And in growing it, I need to, at the networking meetings, the people I'm meeting, on the suggestions that LinkedIn and Facebook are offering, I need to see who can I try to connect with and reach out to bring into my fold. And then obviously with the posts and such that I'm doing, connect with and resonate with them, but I've got to continually be growing the network. So I like that. I also noticed a Coveyism that you did in there. So that was a good job too. There you go. This is great.
So that one I'll admit to blatantly copy.
Well, you can't trademark a title, so you did good there.
Yeah, that's right. And it wasn't exactly the same, right? So I
No, it
didn't.
wasn't. No, it was good though. I like that. That was a nice one. All right, so here's the next thing. What I want to do is just do a quick mention of our sponsor, and then we're going to come back to this. So the thing that we want to do is recognize Universal Accounting Center sponsoring today's episode. We've got the book In the Black, 9 Principles to Making Your Business Profitable. It's an excellent book for accounting professionals to learn what it is they need to do to literally impact their business, but more importantly, become consultative services or offer consultative services to their clientele. One of the things that you can do as an accounting professional is become that trusted strategic advisor. And using these 9 principles found from the book In the Black, you can literally help your clients take their business to in the black and help them actually see what they can be doing to make profit a priority in their companies. So get your free copy of the book. Go to the description of this episode, and in the description, you'll have a link there that you can get a free copy of the ebook. And I encourage you to get a copy, read it for yourself, apply these principles in your business, and then take them to your clients and see what it is you can do to become for them that trusted strategic advisor. Now, Adrian, back to what we're discussing. I've just got a few side questions here. Some things that I think will be quite informative. Why are you so passionate about what it is you're doing? Why is this such a thing that you get drawn to?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I want to tell you a little story to answer that question, if that's okay.
Hmm.
So I was driving back from Toronto to Buffalo just a week after I had lost my job as a lawyer. And I just finished reading this book by Seth Godin. The book's called Tribes. And Seth Godin's one of my favorite marketing minds. But this was a book not really about social media. It was about the way social media is grouping people together. It groups people by common interests, common politics, common love of bird watching, whatever it is. It groups people together. But the book says that then social networks don't naturally create leaders. And so the book was a call to action, and it was called Tribes. We need you to lead us. And I finished reading this book, and I realized that social media could be so powerful for these professionals. So many professionals, they had no idea how this could help them, but they just needed help kind of navigating it. And I was so inspired by this. And I remember I was driving with my wife, and we're about to get to the border crossing, and I said, Natalie, and I'd been offered this job that I hadn't turned down yet. And I said, this job will be great for me. I'm going to be able to, they're giving me a cell phone and a laptop and a projector and health insurance. And my wife's like, a projector? Do you hear yourself? She's like, are you trying to convince me you should take the job, or are you trying to convince yourself? And she said, you don't need to convince me. If you want to start your own thing, then this is the time for you to do it. And honestly, it was probably one of the most impactful conversations in my life. I called the company, I turned down the job, and I started on this path, almost 10 years ago. And in that time, I'd like to say that all of professionals have been converted and they've seen the light. It's been a lot of work, and I've spoken to thousands of people, but it's been inspiring for me to see the power of the collective, right? Of the collective minds, right? We have 45,000 users on our software now, and thousands of people are now giving and sharing and benefiting their community. You know, and sure, it's somewhat selfishly motivated, so they can bring in business, but I love this change. I love how social media turns people, instead of making them greedy, it makes people serve, and they get blessed by serving others. And anyway, so I know it's a long answer to your question, but I'm just passionate about seeing that change and how it can turn around people's business, and also just make them happier professionals.
Well said. I like that. So let's take it a little bit more personable. Um, uh, on a more individual level with you and your family, what's something that you're passionate about that's outside of work?
That's a great question. It's a pretty easy one for me to answer. So the day after Christmas, we had purchased a motorhome, and we took our kids and we took them out of school for a few weeks, and we drove across the southern United States for 25 days. We crossed 17 states and, visited 6 or 7 national parks all over, our beautiful country. And it was one of the happiest, most fun trips our families ever had together. And
That
so in my personal life, I love adventure. I love taking my family and exploring. And it was our first time ever doing a motorhome trip, and that was part of the fun. So yeah. I mean that that's something that I love. It gets me excited just talking about it.
That is amazing. And, I think there's a number of people that would aspire to do that, but to actually do it is incredible. So, what was an unexpected takeaway from that experience? Something that you didn't realize you were going to have, but in the end, you look back and it was like, I am so glad we did this because of X. And it wasn't even on the hope list.
Yeah, it's a great question. So most of the trips I go on with my family, we've been to some cool places together, but I always have my phone with me. And when we're in hotels, I'm always sneaking in some work here or there. But on this motorhome trip, I mean, sure, there was internet everywhere, but there's just so much work to do in terms of getting everything ready and cooking food and preparing the motorhome, that for this whole 25 days, I was just with my family and focused on them. And that was the big kind of unexpected surprise, that by it being a trip that was harder, that required more work, it made me more present for my family. And that was just something that was unexpected and awesome, and makes me wanna do this again. My employees, though, they're happy to have me back at the company for a while. So
Well, I'm going to say the word that stood out in that was the word present. I think that's something that's lacking today. And we're talking about social media. And I know that with social media, so many people are distracted and they're not present. And so it's powerful that you see the value in being present, because there's something to be said for noticing just the simple things around us, the flowers, the trees, the animals, the people, just having a generic conversation as opposed to just I'm speaking because I have something specific I have to ask you. So I like that. So with your trip, what was something that you experienced, a place that you went that you would recommend?
absolutely. So the kind of big come from behind victory of the whole trip was a national park in New Mexico called White Sands.
Okay. Yep.
And it was early on in our trip, and it was just kind of a place we had heard we should stop at. And it just got national park designation, and it's basically this huge sand dunes park, but it's this beautiful white. And so we got there, and you can buy sleds at the gift shop. So our kids were sledding down the hills and jumping off the big sand hills onto more sand. And everyone, we were with one other family, but everyone was just so happy. And just towards the end of our time there, the sun started to set, and kind of the white sand and kind of the dust that sand puts up created this amazing sunset. And it was just this perfect, unexpected moment. And for almost all of us, it ended up, it was one of our highlights of the entire trip. Just this place in the corner of New Mexico that I'd never heard of before the trip. So that
Yep.
was
White
really a
Sands, New
special
Mexico.
experience.
Yes. Good. Good. So with that, I want to ask, what would you say is that quality as to why your best friend is your best friend? And I say that because you were spending time with your family, and I'm assuming that you got pretty close to them, but I know you would have something that you could hone in on as to why in a friendship someone is your best friend. What do you think is that characteristic that may make that possible?
Wow, this is a great question. Yeah, I love this. So my best friend, I think there's just a few attributes about what makes my best friend my best friend. I think the first attribute is we spent years apart when we lived across the country from each other, and
Hmm.
whenever we get together, we just pick up where we left off. The second thing, when I'm with my best friend, and uh, my best friend since I was 7, his name's Luke, and now we live 10 minutes from each other, which is just awesome here in Salt Lake City. Is that whenever we're together, there's never a break in the conversation. You know, we just we're able to communicate on a level that's very deep. Um, and finally, we have a ton of common interests. We just we have fun doing a ton of different things together. He got me into backcountry skiing last winter, which I'm just completely hooked on. But then in the summer, we're trail running, and yeah. So wow, I love that question. I might use that one. I'll try to give you credit for it though if I do right.
There you go. Why is your best friend your best friend? So I can relate to what you're sharing because the friendships that we have, there's a few things that make them important to us. One, I fortunately have relationships with couples where my wife and I are very close friends with the husband and wife. And it's where I find that they compel me to be my best.
I
So
love that.
I struggle sometimes, and my wife, this is going to sound so bizarre. Right now, I'm interested in buying a trail bike. I'm going to be doing some trail riding with my brother
Nice.
here this year, and I'm trading in my motorcycle, my dirt bike, for a trail bike. And in this process, I'm getting ahead of myself, and it's because I'm trying to buy the trail bike in the winter months, and I want to sell my dirt bike in the summer months when I think I can get more for it. So, in other words, buy the trail bike cheaper, sell the dirt bike for more. And my wife says, but you're going against your own principle, which is what I tell my kids. I don't mind what you do, but if you're going to upgrade or get rid of something, you need to sell it first before you get the next thing. That way you've got the cash. And she's holding me on my own crap. And this is kind of bizarre because I'm like, well, you're right, but maybe my rule isn't the best rule, or maybe this is the exception. But anyways, the point is it's where your best friend kind of challenges you on your thinking. Like, okay, I thought you had some principles that you used in your life to make decisions, and it sounds like you're breaking your own principles here. And so
Yeah.
I value that in a friendship, is where they're able to
Oh,
know you
yeah.
well enough that they can call you on your crap.
Well,
So
and that I love that as well because the what that made me think of is your best friend. They know the real you, right? The you that was from when you were 10 years old to
yeah,
now, the you that you may have tried to disguise by pretending to be successful around other people, but it's like your best friends, they know you and they love you for that person. And that's a pretty awesome thing about friendship.
yeah, it makes it genuine. That's true. I like that. So here's another deep question for you, and then I'm going to come back, circle around to business. So the next one is, I recently attended a funeral, and at this funeral, I love funerals as difficult as they are. I love them because it allows me to kind of ground my life and reflect on what's important. It's where I start to be reminded of my time and how I'm spending it. Am I, has it been too long since I've reached out to my friends and family? It really kind of brings up the priorities as they may have slipped over time. It brings up friends and family and activities and things that I've wanted to do. But my point in bringing this up is legacy. At this last funeral, it was interesting to hear people speak of who the individual was and really what they left behind as their legacy, their watermark. And I was just kind of curious, if you had to reflect on what you would like your spouse, your children, your friends to know you as and reflect on you as, what's that hallmark thing that really is your legacy so far in your life?
Yeah. Yeah, very good question. I feel like it's the type of question that I can't answer off the cuff, but as you were asking it, I was thinking about, like my values and my strengths as a person, and and I think from my legacy, I would love to be remembered as as a person that made other people happy, right? That whoever he was around, whatever group he was associated with, that he brought happiness to the people around him.
I love
That's
that.
what I would hope would be said of me.
It's something to be said to be the light in the room when you come in, that it makes people happier, that people are glad they met you, that they're happy they know you. That's important. I like that. That's well said. So on that note, this is where I'm going to circle it back to social media. I think oftentimes in social media, we tend to put up a facade and the perfect person. And I like this idea of being genuine, being open. Some people speak of being vulnerable, but the point is you have a business where you're advising on this. What suggestions do you have for people as to, should we be vulnerable? Should we be open? Should we be transparent? Should we share our struggles and our failings? Is there a time and a place for that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I think one big mistake that professionals make is is by refusing to be vulnerable in any way. Now, look, there are areas of vulnerability that we're never going to want to be open about, right? Like if someone has had an issue with, commingling funds or, taking advantage of clients, right? Like we, there's certain things that we're never going to want to be open about because it would hurt, it would hurt our reputation and could damage our business. But the area where I've seen professionals have the most success being vulnerable is in dealing with loss and dealing with grief. And just one example of this, even though it's not necessarily my secret to share, I just think it's relevant, is, my wife and I, we had a period of our marriage where we struggled with fertility. And my wife had siblings, but none of them had this problem. None of them understood. None of them could relate to it, and they didn't know what to say to her. And so we suffered through kind of one round of this. And then when it came around the second time and we were suffering again, this time my wife shared about it, in this case on Instagram. And she had an outpouring, not just of support, but individuals that had dealt with very similar challenges that came to her aid and just made her feel so loved and really were able to help her, right? Her family loves her. They just didn't know what to do about it. But by being vulnerable to her network, she was able to find people that could help them. And really, I feel like that's one of the things that's missing in social media is, if we're all acting happy all the time, we know it's false. And so how are people dealing with sadness? Right? It's okay. It's okay to be sad in social media. We don't want to be melodramatic either, though, right? We've all seen people on social media that say, this is my last and final post. Everyone here is a jerk, right? I mean, hopefully we haven't seen many of those, but there's some of my network people, they just want to create drama. It's not about creating drama. It's about, being vulnerable. So while I was on this motorhome trip, every day of the trip, every about 2 days, I would take all the pictures and I'd kind of do one post to social media, because I didn't want to be on social media all the time, but I wanted to update friends and family on the adventures we were having. And, all the posts, performed fairly well. I got good engagement on them. But we had one day at Walt Disney World where every single member of the family had a meltdown, right? Like our boy had a meltdown because he was hungry, and our daughter had a meltdown because she didn't want to use the bathroom and, had messed in her pants, even though she's potty trained. And, my wife was like, I never really liked Disney World anyway. And I had a meltdown where I was like, next time you're not invited because you never liked Disney World. And anyway, but that post that I shared, right? That's what people love, because that's real. That's something you can relate to, right? So it's about, share your successes, but also share your challenges, because people are going to relate more to those. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. I've got a friend who actually has a family picture of them in front of the Disney castle and his sister. I don't know if this is relevant, but it may help explain the picture. She's in her 30s. She has Down syndrome, and they're all in raincoats. It's raining, and they're having their picture in front of the castle, and she's giving the bird. She's flipping off everyone. And you can tell she's not happy. She does not want to be there. She's like, this is garbage. And so I think that's kind of funny and apropos to what you're describing. So thank you for that. And you believe me, that's a social post of sorts. So here's what I'd like to do. I want to wrap this up. Adrian, I think what you've shared today is very appropriate, very timely. I encourage everyone to go check out Clearview Social and see what services they offer that may be advantageous to helping you with your social presence. I encourage you also to get the copy of the book In the Black. And with this, I just want to wrap it up by suggesting that you actually subscribe to our podcast and see what it is you can do to build the premier accounting firm in your area. For more information, obviously, listen to our other episodes. We have other experts sharing great advice, but also visit us at universalaccountingschool.com and see what you can do to actually apply these principles in your business to get paid what you're worth. You can also contact us by calling 801-265-3777. So, Adrian, with that, thank you so much for your time and for your sharing all of these great tidbits. I think these tips and tricks are very appropriate, and I wish you the best. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And just one last thing I wanted to add. I do have something I would like to give to listeners if they're interested. It's a free book. It's called Social Media for Lawyers, Twitter edition. It was my first book, but I own the digital rights to it now. And if anyone would like a free copy, they can email me at adrian@clearviewsocial.com. Even though it has lawyers in the title, it's really just written for professionals. And, I'd be glad to share that with you if you'd like a copy.
I love it. I'll put the information in the description as well of the podcast, and they'll have it in the episode information there. And that's great. Thank you for sharing it.
Sounds great. This was a blast. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Bye-bye, Adrian.